the sermons were designed to take into account the reduction of numbers going to synagogue and perhaps people's lack of Jewish education, and maybe it needed a very special rabbi like your grandfather in order to achieve this?
I think very much so, yes, because he welcomed everybody, in knowing that many of the people who would be listening to his sermons, once they left the sanctity of the synagogue, would go back to their daily lives and not be very much concerned with the finesses of Judaism. And this was expressed in many, many times, and especially as concerns the idea that the bar mitzvah was regarded at that time the end rather than the beginning, and he bemoaned that very, very much.
In one of Rabbi Rosenberg's sermons, I hope I've got this right, and please correct me if I've got it wrong, there was an understanding for the breadwinner in his struggle for existence who had difficulty in Shabbat observance. He understood the person that was struggling and may had to do things on Shabbat that maybe he shouldn't.
From the way you ask me that question, it shows obviously that you have read these 20 sermons very, very carefully, because you hit on a very minute, but very, very, very significant point, namely that it would be almost unthinkable that a rabbi should say, well, don't violate the Sabbath unless you really, really have to. But this is indirectly what my grandpa was saying, and he was saying it from the point of view that if in the outside world you are forced by circumstances to violate some of the principles, at least in the home, in the warmth and the sanctity of your home, as this tired breadwinner returns, say for the Sabbath, there should remain and reign a spirit of Yiddishkeit. For the great majority of his active rabbinic life, he was in a town called Torn, that's Thorn, which subsequently, following World War I, was annexed to Poland and is now called Torun, Torun, and that was the congregation which he held for a period about 25 years, and it was typically a small center, so to speak, because he was not only the rabbi of that town, but he was a rabbi of that whole district.
Certainly from the sermons that Rabbi Dr. Rosenberg wrote, it seems to me anyway, the intense love he had for his congregation.
Very, very much so. And also knowing that they were sort of, might call it backsliding, so to speak, in a very, very gentle way. Each sermon had some sort of what you might call a gentle musar. For example, there is one of the sermons that's called by the zechut, by the merit of the women, was Israel freed from the bondage of Egypt, and talking about these women and their merits and their righteousness. He sort of said, do you women here in the audience, so to speak, can you see yourself in their model? In other words, are you able to replicate their ways?
It was a very difficult time for Rabbi Rosenberg, wasn't it? Because the Jews at that time were exploring different things, weren't they? And it was hard for him.
It was certainly hard for him because at that time, this comes out more in his diary, that people all around him were intermarrying or actually converting, and the conversion was for the purpose of attaining certain standards, say academically, which you could not as a Jew attain. It was like an entrance key, so to speak. And this is something that he very much spoke out against.
This particular quote comes from one of the sermons which I found very, very inspirational. Let us therefore not be overcome by a melancholy mood. And for a Rav to say that, I don't think a Rav today would stand on the pulpit and make a statement like that, and I found that very comforting.
Yes, to some extent, perhaps inadvertently, he may have reflected on his own mood, because in another book which where I translated the diary, a 10-year diary that my grandfather wrote, a diary spanning the years of 1910 to 1920, he showed, in many cases, demonstrated his unhappiness with many factors, including personal lives and the seeing that Judaism was waning. Because he reached out,
yes,
to
and that was
people.
very important to him, wasn't it? Reaching out to his community,
of course,
and inspiring them to do whatever they can.
It was reaching out, and you could tell from the tenor of the sermons that he was hoping, let me hold on to you within the confines of the synagogue as long as possible, because I know and I'm afraid that as you go out into the wide world, you may not necessarily take with you the message which I have tried to instill in you.
It goes without saying today that all Jews are accepted and counted as part and parcel of Jewish society. But it was a relatively new concept during Rabbi Rosenberg's tenure as a Rav, wasn't it?
I'm not a historian, but for what I have read, that is certainly the case, because until the early part of the 19th century, the normative style of Judaism was one of keeping mitzvot. Sort of a customary in those days of the German rabbis to publish their sermons. And there are many such publications in German. I am not aware of any of such publications that have been translated into English and published.
Would you say that these 20 sermons are timeless for every generation and period?
Basically, the message that they give certainly is timeless.